Now, I understand, Senator Ludlam, you have some questions.
I've got a couple for IT support, if those people are here.
Yes.
Yep, good, thank you. As a member of the Parliamentary ICT Advisory Board, I'm well aware of the enormous effort that gets put in behind the scenes to facilitate and advance the work that this Parliament and its committees do. So I just want to open with a note of appreciation from myself and my colleagues. And particularly on the subject of security, we're all in here changing our passwords regularly and using the remote access tokens because collectively we understand that security in here is important. Can you give us a brief rundown of the number of attempted cyber intrusions into the APH system over the last year?
We get A.S. Setran, Chief Information Officer, Department of Parliamentary Services. We get an average of about 400 incidents of malware a month in the Parliamentary Computing Network. In the last 3 months, we've also had 3 specific phishing-type attempts against various users on the Parliamentary Computing Network. All of those were part of broader campaigns across the government and other organisations, so none of them were specifically about us, but we have had a set of those.
Sorry, none of those were specifically about Parliament, so just part of what's generally washing
they're
through?
A part of broader campaigns targeting multiple government agencies.
Yeah.
In each case, we received advice from the Australian Signals Directorate about those attempts and their nature, and also remediation actions.
Are you aware of any that were targeting the Parliament specifically?
No.
No? Okay, thanks. Most of, well, sort of all of our stuff, and I presume most of the building runs on Microsoft software. Are there any other operating systems in widespread use under your purview?
Microsoft Windows is the most prevalent operating system we have. We do have people now with their Apple devices which run the iOS operating system,
yep.
And we have a small number of users who are using Android-type telephones.
But in terms of the servers that are used in here, they're mostly serving Microsoft?
They're mostly Microsoft. We do have some Unix servers in the data centre.
Figured. Okay, thanks. Now, we know that Microsoft software contains a backdoor, which is utilised by the US NSA, and Microsoft has been very active in assisting the NSA to circumvent the company's own encryption standards. So what can you tell the committee about the network-level security threats posed by using Microsoft software, given that it has been backdoored by foreign intelligence agencies?
I would have to take that on notice.
Why is that?
It's not a level of detail that I'm familiar with.
I'm not sure that I'd call it detail. So, for example, do we provide for a specific patch against that backdoor, or is the Parliament's network open to intrusion by the US government?
We implement the patches provided by the Microsoft organisation to their systems based on vulnerabilities that they're aware of.
Yeah.
We don't get any specific advice on vulnerabilities that may or may not be built into the software.
Okay. But you're aware that Microsoft is under a legal obligation to allow the US NSA access to its servers and its hosting services?
We're aware that there are rumoured to be things like that around.
No, it's not a rumour. We have primary source documentation.
We don't
know
have
that's occurring.
We don't have capabilities to create any patches for vulnerabilities of that nature. We're dependent on what the industry provides us, okay, and advice that we might get from Australian Signals Directorates.
Thank you. So should parliamentarians and staff working in this building assume that we are exposed to that level of intrusion? Yes,
I suppose you should be able to assume that. Also, it probably should be noted that our network is not a protected network, it's unclassified, so...
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what about ministerial?
For ministers, their home departments provide their IT. Each minister has access to the Parliamentary Computing Network in the same way as backbenchers, yes.
I would have to chase the departments around this building one after another, though,
to see what they do.
Okay. But as far as the work of ordinary MPs, everybody sitting around these tables, most of the people behind, that backdoor is in effect. You've not taken any actions to remedy that security hole that's been opened by the NSA?
No, we wouldn't have taken any specific action.
Is there any reason why not? And could I request that you might take that action on behalf of all of us?
We would be dependent on somebody being able to provide us appropriate patches to close that. We don't have the technical skills to create patches to close that nature of vulnerability. So we would have to take that on notice to work with Australian Signals Directorate.
Okay, I would agree. They would be the ones with that expertise. Have you sought to verify? You said you're aware of the rumours, as you call them. Have you sought to verify whether those rumours are correct? Have you called on the ASD to date to provide you with advice on the fact that all of our email, calendars, all of our data traffic in this Parliament has been exposed to a fairly serious security flaw? We
haven't had a discussion with the ASD specific to any particular nation state. We have had some general discussions about potential intents from all styles of potential threats, I suppose, to our environment, whether nation-state activists or organised crime. So we have some regular conversations.
But if the Chinese government had opened a backdoor in the operating system of every device in this room, and indeed in this building, it would be a gargantuan scandal, and presumably you would have called the ASD as soon as you were notified. Is it the fact that it's the United States government that means you've taken this rather more relaxed attitude?
No, we haven't considered any differences between any nation states.
Okay, so if the Chinese government, just to use that as an example, had opened a security hole on every device in this building, you wouldn't have sought advice?
We would have sought advice, yes.
Okay, but have you sought advice given that it's the US government that's done this to us?
No, we have not.
Why is that?
We haven't been given any validation that exposure exists or is there at the moment.
What sort of validation do you need? The primary documents are in the public domain that Microsoft is under a legal obligation to open that security hole. So what validation are you awaiting? It's been in every newspaper on the planet for 3 or 4 months.
We would need some evidence that the exposure has been used against us. We haven't had any...
But have you sought evidence?
We don't have the capabilities or the skills in our relatively small IC team to look for that sort of evidence. We would be dependent on advice from...
ASD?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you asked them?
We haven't asked that specific question.
Why is that? Don't you think it's kind of remarkable? Every device in this building has been backdoored. And you're not primarily responsible for security, or you would...
I am responsible for IT security.
Okay, so do we have a serious problem here, or is this something that you're perfectly relaxed and comfortable about?
I'm not perfectly relaxed and comfortable that there would be an exposure, but it's not one that's been specifically on the top of our minds and hasn't been brought to our attention specifically earlier on.
You're aware that a security hole such as the one that we're discussing here is open to exploitation by parties other than the US NSA once it's open?
We're reliant on the Microsoft patching program for their systems.
Yeah, and you're aware that Microsoft is under a legal obligation in the United States to leave the security vulnerability as built, that there will be no patches from Microsoft for this particular hole?
I would imagine that they would give us patches if it was open to others than the intended target or the intended recipient.
When you became aware that the security vulnerability existed that has been built into the software that we are all forced to use in this building, did you notify occupants of this building? Was there a memo that I missed?
No, there has not been a notification.
Why is that?
It's just something that we've overlooked.
It's a pretty big thing to overlook, I'd submit to you.
What we can do is, now that you've brought this to our attention, we will seek advice from ASD, generally for exposure like that, which would impact all of the government computing networks, not just ours. We would be expecting that they would give us some advice and guidance on how to treat that.
These vulnerabilities have been in the public domain for months. Were you waiting on an estimate session to give this some consideration, or I'm not sure what kind of trigger you'd be seeking otherwise?
Normally the trigger would be that we would be getting advice from Australian Signals Directorate.
Senator Faulkner.
Does the risks include malware?
Malware is something that we get regularly through all sorts of means, and that's where I mentioned that we have about 400 incidents of what we'd call the stock standard malware a month in the network.
So how do you detect and remediate that risk?
For malware, we have software systems that are designed to detect and clean out those style of things. There's a number of companies, and we've got Trend Micro and a couple of other products which will help us detect.
So are those programs that you've got to address malware, are they ongoing programs?
Yes, they are.
All of them?
The ones that we've implemented, they're operating in real time, all of the time on the network. So they will pick the products that are known malware that have hit before, like the companies who provide the software are constantly updating and releasing patches and patterns that help identify content that is malicious or potentially malicious, and those products are blocked at the gateway.
Now, we've got public Wi-Fi now available in the building, haven't we?
Yes.
Does that have any, what if any, can you just explain what that means in terms of any additional risk to the network?
We haven't had any incidents of malware or things having been introduced to the public Wi-Fi. We've got firewalls that separate the public Wi-Fi from the rest of the network.
Say that last bit again, sorry.
We have firewalls that separate the public Wi-Fi from the remainder of the network, and we haven't had any instances that we've detected of any malware being introduced to the public Wi-Fi into the private parts of the network.
So that means there's no risk or no additional risk. Is that fair?
There is some additional risk, but it hasn't eventuated. The likelihood is quite low. There are strong security protections between the various elements of the network.
Well, if there's additional risk, are you doing anything to address it?
Yes, we've got the firewalls and we've got the monitoring and logging of what happens.
Okay.
Okay, before I go back to Senator Ludlam, Senator Destiari suggested you had some questions. Is it on this particular topic or was it on another topic?
It's on a related, but no, not on this topic.
Okay, we'll go back to Senator Ludlam.
Let's ask another question.
One more question.
You actually tested for risk?
And there have been risk assessments undertaken as part of the projects that implemented the Wi-Fi. And we do penetration testing.
And what was the original date in relation to Wi-Fi?
I haven't got the original date that preceded me. I can take that on notice.
Has there been ongoing testing since that time?
There is regular testing of penetration, but not constant testing of penetration.
And you're responsible for coordinating that testing?
Yes.
The
Or my teams are.
Your team, yeah. Sure, I appreciate that. And the results of that testing are reported to whom? The
results are reported internally. We also work with ASD on a series of capabilities, and they do look at our traffic and are also using their capabilities to help us monitor our environment.
And so on the basis of that, you're able to make the comments you've made to me about risk and additional risk?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to Senator Ludlam.
Thanks, Chair. Look, just by way of follow-up, I don't know whether you're aware the ABC made an FOI request to the Attorney General's Department maybe a month or 6 weeks ago that was provided to us, that they had prepared a briefing for the Attorney, so this is the former Attorney General, about Prism, so this is about the NSA security program that has installed these backdoors in major US service providers and software companies over a period of years, and that the Attorney General's Department had briefed the Attorney roughly 2 months prior to the revelations that the whistleblower Edward Snowden put the issue into the public domain. 2 months before that, the AG had been briefed by his department. I'm just wondering whether on or after that time the Attorney General's Department provided a briefing to DPS or the clerk of the Blackrod or Senate IT or the people who are responsible for the security of the network in this building.
I haven't been provided a briefing. I don't know what briefings other people have been provided on that matter.
I'm inviting anybody at the table to speak up if you were provided a briefing by the AG's department or anybody.
No, we haven't been sent.
Okay, thank you. So the AG knew they didn't think it, and I'll follow these questions up with them later in the week, they didn't think it worth briefing the people responsible for security of this network that Australia's parliamentarians use, that system had backdoored the software that we were all using in here. You had heard nothing from the AG's department?
Not specifically about Prism and those backdoors.
Okay, thank you. Has APH IT security staff engaged with the new cyber security centre on this issue in particular? Do you guys have a seat at that table?
We haven't, to my awareness, had any particular discussions about Prism and that exposure with the ASD or the new Cyber Security Operations Centre. Okay,
now your colleague came to the table just before we broke before. We're just wondering, the chair was wondering out loud whether you'd had a message from the NSA. Have you got any information that you could enlighten us with?
Oh, hi, Steve McCauley, Assistant Secretary of the ICT Infrastructure Branch. I have had some discussions or communications with my Director of Security. They can advise that we are aware of such communications. We are patched, and there are no outbound messages that are sent to Microsoft or any other organisation that we do not that we're not aware of, that we would not then choose to select, and we're not aware of those types of backdoors, so to speak, for Microsoft to obtain that data. We work with ASD, and they also monitor all outbound messages in conjunction with us as a partnership. So.
Okay. All right, this is interesting. It's also somewhat at odds with what your colleague had told us, but that's okay. So I'm presuming those patches haven't been provided by Microsoft because it would be illegal under US law for them to do so. So is that something that your staff have written here?
The specific patches I can't comment on. I can take that on notice if required, but I have been advised that we have specific patches to negate these types of things as recommended from time to time by ASD if there are any vulnerabilities discovered, and again any outbound requests for this type of data would be trapped, I'm advised, at our security frameworks, and therefore we would choose as to whether we send them or not, and I'm not aware of us sending any such data to Microsoft.
I'm trying to be very specific here. This is not a generalised question. The patches that you've installed to close those loopholes in the Microsoft OS and its various applications, have they been designed to prevent Prism from collecting data or traffic originating?
They're not necessarily Microsoft patches. They're firewall and other security type gates, so to speak, that stop those sorts of requests going back to.
Okay, because I know I'm picking on Microsoft a little bit. I'm presuming members of Parliament and staff in here also use Facebook and various other applications that have been backdoored by the NSA. Are you telling us that the Parliament House firewall is designed to explicitly prevent data traffic going back, to block Prism collection capabilities?
Not specifically on those applications. Again, we can monitor the traffic flow, so if there were things that were detected again or known of as far as vulnerabilities, we would go and work with ASD to close those gaps, if any.
But I'm seriously trying to get a yes or no. Once I have it, I'm happy to wind up. Has the Parliament and the applications and the devices that are used by ourselves and our staff been firewalled against use of the Prism system in the United States?
We have to take that on notice and follow that up for you.
Because it sort of sounded as though it had, but I'm not sure whether you're walking back from that or whether you're not sure, or what are you telling us exactly?
Not specifically for Prism that I'm aware of, but again, there are processes in place that would generally prohibit these types of requests going out.
I would imagine so, yeah. What reaction did you or your staff, or what actions did you and your staff take when those revelations became public? Your colleague has informed us that AGD didn't provide you with a briefing. When those revelations broke into the public domain, did you take any specific action subsequently?
I believe my security staff have had discussions with AGD around those, yes, and
okay.
As to what things were put in place to mitigate those, I would have to take that on notice.
Yeah, if you could, but you're aware of what the specific question that I'm asking is. I'm interested in the specific Prism program that effectively bifurcates traffic and leaves a copy on the NSA service in the United States, whether this building is immune from that collection capability or not.
I understand your question and
That's okay. Thank you for providing that additional information. That's been helpful. I've got a couple of questions just to finish, if I may, about the Science Applications International Corporation, SAIC, which is a contract that DPS has with that corporation for software services to the tune of nearly $1.4 million. Can you just tell us what kind of software exactly that entity is working on for the DPS?
There are a number of contracts with SAIC. I'm not aware of which one is specifically you're talking about.
All right.
So I take that on notice. But the types of products that they provide are to support the PAL info system in the library. They have provided a capability called Pterodex, which particularly supports the search capability in that product. The company is also, their software is used in the build system that supports the chamber work.
Yeah.
And they are developing the new table office production system for the chamber departments at the moment. So there's a number of contracts with them.
That's fairly serious stuff. Maybe on notice, because I know we're short of time, could you break out for us what the particular contracts, their dollar amount, the dates on which they are initiated and for how long they run, and for exactly what they're for, what services are being provided?
Some of those contracts might be with a chamber department. They may not all be directly with us.
All right, just to the limits of what you're responsible for, and if you're aware of others, just at least give us some pointers so I know who to chase. Is DPS aware of just how notorious this company is for false claims and misconduct allegations against it over federal tenders in the United States, and that in March 2012 it agreed to pay $500 million to the City of New York after the company's CEO admitted to criminal behaviour of employees on the contract? Did that behaviour come up when you were doing your due diligence on this company?
I'd have to take that on notice because all of these contracts are quite old. They're not new contracts.
Yeah, but you're rolling them over. So the original one went from Feb 2012 to 2013, and it's just been extended to February 2015. So
I'm not sure which contract you're...
You have indicated that there are a number. Yeah. Can you just provide us then on notice with what due diligence you've done and whether you're aware of those specific allegations of misconduct? $500 million is a fairly serious breach penalty, if you will, whether you spotted that behaviour before you rolled these contracts over.
Yeah, I'll take all of that on notice.
That's very much appreciated. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.